I've always loved traveling, wandering into unknown places, taking wrong turns, ending up somewhere far from where I was supposed to be. It was my little rebellion against the structured life I'd been forced to live. But I never imagined that one wrong road would lead me into something I could never escape from. This is my story, and if you're listening, remember this. Some places are forgotten for a reason. It was early evening when I lost my way. I had rented a motorbike to cut through some of the more remote countryside roads. The main highway was under repair, and a local shopkeeper had told me about a shortcut that would shave an hour off my journey. He drew it with chalk on the side of a crate, his hands trembling slightly. "Don't stay on that road after dark," he warned. His voice was low, like he didn't want the trees to hear. "If you miss the turning, keep going straight. Don't take the old road." I laughed it off. Superstitious nonsense, I thought. Villagers always had their ghost stories. I'd grown up on tales of jinns, demons, and cursed lands, and not once had I seen anything more frightening than a stray dog. The shortcut began as a narrow dirt path, hemmed in by thick trees that leaned overhead, blocking out the fading sunlight. The hum of cicadas grew louder as the day turned to dusk. My bike rattled over stones and roots, the engine groaning in protest. After half an hour, I realized I'd taken a wrong turn. The path forked, and the markers I had been told to look out for, a small shrine and a banyan tree, were nowhere in sight. My phone had no signal, and the GPS showed only a blank patch of green. By then, the sun had dropped behind the horizon. Shadows swallowed the trees. I should have turned back. I should have. But curiosity, that cursed part of me that never knew when to stop, urged me forward. That's when I saw the sign. It was a rusted metal board leaning against a broken fence. The words were nearly illegible, swallowed by moss and time, but I could just make them out. Dari Char Village, 2 kilometers. I had never heard of it. No maps I'd seen listed a place by that name. Yet something about it pulled me in, as if the road itself wanted me to follow. The path narrowed further, weeds and grass pushing through cracks in the forgotten asphalt. My bike's headlight cut through the mist that had begun creeping low across the ground. The silence pressed in on me, thicker than any forest should have. Then, through the fog, I saw the village. Dari Char was strange. The first thing I noticed was how still everything was. No dogs barked, no chickens clucked, no children ran through the dirt lanes. The houses were small and old, their mud walls cracked and roofs sagging, yet they weren't abandoned. Lanterns glowed faintly in windows. Doors stood half open, as if expecting me. Then I saw them. The villagers. They stood in silence at the edge of the square, a dozen of them, watching me. Men, women, even a few children. Their clothes were plain, almost too plain, as though they'd stepped out of another century. The women wore faded saris, the men loose shirts and lungies. None of them spoke. None of them moved closer. A shiver ran through me. Finally, an old man stepped forward. His skin was weathered like dried leather, his back bent with age. His eyes, though, his eyes were too sharp, too alive. "Welcome, traveler," he rasped. His voice sounded as though it hadn't been used in years. "You've found our village." I forced a smile. I took a wrong turn? I didn't mean to intrude. Could you tell me the way back to the main road?" The villagers whispered among themselves, though their lips barely seemed to move. The old man looked at me for a long moment, then shook his head. "The road is gone after dark," he said simply. "You must stay the night." I didn't want to. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to get back on my bike and ride until I found something familiar. But the villagers had already begun moving, silently guiding me to a low building at the edge of the square. It was a guest house, or at least that's what they called it. A single room with a straw mat for sleeping, a cracked jug of water, and a small oil lamp. The old man stood in the doorway as I stepped inside. "You will be safe here," he said. The words sounded more like an order than reassurance. Before I could reply, he shut the door. I sat in the dim light, listening to the silence outside. Not even crickets sang here. My stomach tightened with unease. Villages were supposed to be full of sound, laughter, voices, animals. This place was suffocatingly still. I tried to distract myself by drinking from the jug, but the water tasted strange, stale with a metallic tang. I set it aside. Hours seemed to pass. I must have dozed because when I opened my eyes again, the lamp had nearly burned out. And that's when I heard it, a whisper. At first I thought it was the wind, but the sound grew clearer, threading through the cracks in the door. "Leave before dawn." I froze, my heart thundering in my chest. "Don't drink the water." The voice was faint, almost childlike, but urgent. I stumbled to the door and pressed my ear against it. The square outside was empty. The houses stood in silence, their lanterns now extinguished. The well, don't look. My hands shook. I pulled back from the door, breathing hard. The voice faded as suddenly as it had come, leaving only the heavy silence again. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. When the first light of dawn crept through the cracks in the wall, I stepped outside. The village was alive again. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Women swept the dirt paths. Men carried baskets and tools. Children ran and laughed, though their laughter felt somehow wrong, too rehearsed. The old man appeared beside me without a sound. "You survived the night," he said. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He only smiled. His teeth were too white, too perfect for someone his age. "The road will open again at sunset," he said. "Until then, you are our guest." I wanted to leave immediately, but when I checked my bike, the tires were flat, both of them, torn as if slashed. My mouth drew dry. The villagers had already begun gathering in the square. Their eyes followed me wherever I went, always watching, always silent when I tried to speak. And then I noticed something else. There were no elderly beyond the old man, no one middle-aged, only him and the others who all seemed frozen between youth and adulthood. And every time I looked at the well in the center of the square, I swore I could hear something moving beneath the wooden lid, something that wasn't water. The day dragged on with a strange, suffocating heaviness. I wandered the village paths, trying to make sense of what I had stumbled into. Every house I passed seemed empty, yet I could feel eyes following me from behind the cracked windows. Children ran past me in sudden bursts of energy, only to vanish around corners, leaving the echoes of their laughter lingering like a cruel joke. Every now and then, an adult would appear to glance at me, their expression blank, as though they had no soul beneath their skin. I returned to the well in the square. Something about it kept calling me. My curiosity, my fear, and perhaps some other darker instinct tugged at me, urging me closer. The wooden lid was old and warped, but I lifted it with ease. The smell hit me immediately. Damp, decay, and something metallic that reminded me of blood. The well was deep, far deeper than any ordinary village well, and its walls were coated with dark streaks that ran like veins down into the darkness. I leaned closer and peered into the abyss, my stomach twisting. At first I saw nothing. only blackness. Then movement. Something thin and pale wriggled in the water below. A hand? A face? I couldn't tell. My skin crawled and I slammed the lid shut, backing away. I turned, and the villagers were all around me now, silently forming a circle. Their eyes glowed faintly in the fading light, and my heart pounded. The old man stepped forward, his face solemn. "You've seen too much," he said quietly. "Some things are not meant for the living." His gaze swept over the crowd, and they all bowed their heads in unison. I didn't know if it was reverence or fear. My hands trembled as I tried to form words, to ask him what was going on, but he only shook his head. "You will learn soon enough." Night fell faster than I expected, and a thick fog rolled into the village, swallowing the paths and houses in gray mist. The villagers returned to their homes, but I felt eyes on me at every turn. Sleep was impossible. I sat on the straw mat in the guest house, staring at the jug of water and the dying oil lamp. The whisper came again, soft but insistent. "Don't drink the water." I shook my head violently, telling myself it was just my imagination. But I could not escape the feeling that the village itself was alive, watching me, testing me. The next morning, the village seemed to celebrate my presence. The children ran around me, mimicking my movements, their eyes too knowing, too old for their faces. The adults smiled too wide, their movements stiff, puppet-like. They guided me to a small wooden table where they offered food, but I could not eat. Every bite smelled of rot. Every sip of water burned my throat. When I dared to ask the old man what had happened to the villagers, he only said, "They belong here, as you may soon." I did not understand, and I was too afraid to press further. By the third day, I began to notice subtle changes in myself. My reflection in the well's water was slightly off, my eyes darker, my skin paler, my posture stiffening. The villagers never seemed to age, but I could feel myself weakening, shrinking, like I was slowly becoming part of their world. Every time I tried to leave, the fog thickened, my bike mysteriously flattened, paths twisted, and I would end up back at the square, staring at the well. And at night, the whispers returned, growing louder and more urgent. Join, before, dawn. I could hear more than one voice now, overlapping, desperate, pleading, warning. On the fourth night, I couldn't resist the pull of the well. I approached it carefully, listening to the voices that seemed to seep from the water itself. Join, become one, see. My hands shook as I lifted the lid. The darkness below seemed to breathe. I could see the pale, writhing forms more clearly now. Faces of villagers, faces of children, faces of things I could not identify, all staring up at me. Their eyes begged for release, their mouths moving silently, only the faintest ripples of sound reaching my ears. The old man appeared behind me, his presence cold and immovable. "They are waiting," he said softly. "Do not fight it." I stumbled back, my mind fracturing with fear. I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the fog. The villagers appeared again, circling the square silently, their eyes fixed on me, waiting for me to understand what was happening. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but the paths twisted beneath my feet, guiding me back toward the well. It was as if the village itself was alive, bending reality to keep me within its boundaries. By dawn, I realized the truth. The villagers were not living. They were trapped, caught between the world of the living and something else, something that fed on souls, on fear, on curiosity. And now they were offering me a choice I could not refuse: leave and be hunted forever, or stay and join them. I collapsed near the well, my mind screaming with terror and confusion. The whispers grew into a cacophony, the faces in the water pressing against the surface, their hands reaching out. I tried to resist, to pull myself away, but the fog closed in and the village had me in its grasp. I do not know how long I struggled. Time seemed meaningless in Darichar. Days and nights blurred together, and my body felt heavier with each passing hour. My movements sluggish, my thoughts clouded. The villagers' eyes followed me constantly, their expressions unreadable, yet I felt their hunger for my essence. I understood then that the village had been waiting for me, for someone who dared wander into its forgotten paths, for someone who would give them a new soul to bind. The well was their heart, and I could feel it pulsing beneath the surface, calling me. And when the sun finally broke through the fog, pale and weak, I realized I had no choice. The village had claimed me, body and soul. My reflection in the well now matched the villagers. Hollow eyes, stiff posture, the faintest hint of a smile that was not my own. I tried the turn, to run, but the paths shifted instantly, leading me back to the square. The old man nodded solemnly, as if welcoming me into the fold. I understood then that some places are forgotten because they are hungry, and wandering travelers are their feast.
By the 5th night, I had fully realized the horror of Darichar. The village was alive in a way no living town should be. The paths shifted subtly beneath my feet, the houses creaked and groaned as if breathing, and the well whispered my name constantly. I tried to ignore it, tried to pretend I could resist, but the voices had grown insistent, forming patterns, calling, beckoning, twisting my thoughts. I woke to find the villagers standing around my room, silent and still, their eyes glowing faintly in the early dawn light. "It is time," the old man said. His voice carried the weight of inevitability. I could see that he was not a man who lied, not one who made idle threats. The others moved closer, and I understood I had no choice. Every instinct to flee was useless. The village would not allow it. I was led to the square, where the well waited like a patient predator. I stared down into its blackness, feeling its pull in my chest, in my bones, in my very soul. The water shimmered with something that was not water, and the writhing forms beneath the surface pressed closer, their pale faces reaching for me. I fell to my knees, trying to resist the compulsion to look, to reach, to surrender. The whisperings rose into a chorus now, overlapping voices, endless voices. "Join, become one, see." The old man placed a hand on my shoulder. His touch was cold, unyielding, and I felt a strange compulsion to obey. "Do not fight. You cannot leave, not anymore." I tried to speak, to scream, but no words came. My voice had been stolen by the village itself. Slowly, I leaned over the edge of the well. My reflection was not my own. The face staring back at me was pale, hollow-eyed, and smiling faintly. It mimicked my movements perfectly, as though it were a shadow of my soul. Beneath the surface, I could see the villagers, those I had seen during the day, those who had vanished in the fog, and countless others whose faces I did not recognize. They reached toward me, beckoning, urging, guiding me toward my fate. I fell backward, trying to tear myself away, but the fog surged into the square, enveloping me. The villagers' forms became distorted, stretching and bending like shadows in a fire. The whispers turned into screams, and yet I understood them perfectly. They were warning me, guiding me, instructing me, and I could not resist. Every cell in my body pulsed with the village's rhythm. I was no longer just a visitor. I was part of it. Hours, or maybe days passed. Time was meaningless here. I wandered the village under the watchful eyes of the old man and the other villagers. My hands moved on their own, helping to repair houses that seemed to rot as soon as I touched them. My feet carried me to the well constantly, as though I were compelled to inspect its depths endlessly. The water called to me, whispered to me, revealed its secrets in moments of clarity that left my mind spinning. I saw the history of the village, the truth of its hunger. Darachar had not always been this way. It had been abandoned long ago after a plague, or perhaps a curse. No one could be certain. Those who had stayed, or those who had been drawn in, became part of the village's essence. Their souls were trapped in the well, their bodies maintained as hollow vessels to lure more travelers. The old man was the keeper, the guide, the bridge between the living and the village's hunger. By the seventh night, I could feel myself changing. My reflection in the well was no longer distinct. It blurred with the faces of other villagers. Some I had seen, some I had not. My voice returned, but it was hollow, distant, layered with whispers. I tried to resist, to assert my identity, but it was impossible. The village did not allow individuality. It consumed it, reshaped it, made it part of its eternal pattern. When a traveler finally came down the road, lost and curious, I was ready. I greeted them from the square, my face a perfect imitation of humanity, my eyes glowing faintly with the village's essence. I whispered words of welcome, guiding them subtly toward the well, just as I had been guided. The whispers in my head instructed me, and I obeyed. Their confusion, their fear, their fleeting attempts at escape delighted the village. And as the traveler leaned over the well, as I once had, the cycle continued. The faces beneath the surface reached up, eager to the new soul, and the village absorbed them, strengthened, pulsed with renewed life. I watched, no longer human in the way I had been, but no longer entirely separate. I had become one with Darachar. Sometimes when the fog rolls in thick and the paths twist unnaturally, I can see the world beyond the village. I can see roads I once traveled, forests I once explored, cities I once loved, and I remember the life I had. But the village's pull is stronger. I cannot leave. I do not want to leave. I am the keeper now, a guide, a bridge, a part of the endless hunger. If you are traveling, if you wander, if you lose your way, beware the roads less traveled. Beware the villages that do not appear on maps. Darachar waits. It watches. It chooses. And once it has seen you, once it has noted your presence, you are never free. Some places are forgotten for a reason, and some people are forgotten forever. I write this as a warning, though perhaps it is too late for me to truly warn anyone. I am Darachar. I am part of its memory, its will, its hunger, and the well calls endlessly for the next curious traveler. If you find yourself lost, if you see a road that seems too quiet, if you hear whispers in the fog, do not approach, do not follow, do not look into the well. Some places are not meant to be found, and some villages are not meant to be left. I am watching. I am waiting. I am Darachar.